Hi, everybody. I'm excited to bring you this week's episode where I talk to Gabe Pollock about jazz entrepreneurship and the reopening of the Bop Stop Jazz Club. Since we recorded the episode, I noticed that on Gabe's Facebook page, he posted that he's returning to school as a professor this fall, which is amazing. He says he's excited to teach his first college course, Music Business, at Baldwin Wallace Conservatory of Music as part of the school's unique Arts Management and Entrepreneurship department, in addition to, of course, running the club. Gabe, that's amazing. Your hard work is paying off, and now you're a college professor teaching about all the things you've learned over the past few years. So I just wanted to give you an extra shout out, and that happened since we recorded. So just wanted to make sure everybody knows that. And speaking of shout outs, I'd like to give some shout outs to some of the folks that I know are listening out there. So thanks, Amanda, Eric, Ivy, Maria. Thanks for checking out the Facebook page and commenting. I really appreciate it, and I know the community appreciates it. So thanks again, and now on to the episode.
Welcome to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit jimreinventionrevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim.
Hi, everybody. Hey, this is Jim, and welcome to episode 8 of Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm sitting here with Gabe Pollock, and we are sitting in the green room of the Bop Stop, which is a jazz club. We're going to be talking about reinventing a jazz club today and jazz entrepreneurship. And I think I said that right. It's kind of a foreign phrase to me because I'm like, I didn't know there was jazz entrepreneurship, but Gabe's going to tell us about it. So anyways, Gabe, welcome to the revolution.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being on the show, and thanks for putting up with me in terms of setting up my gear and finding the right place to do this. So we had to move into the green room because we were out in the main performance area, and I thought it was air conditioning, but what was going on out there? It was like a loud buzzing.
We have to keep our beers cold for everyone that comes. Those were the beer coolers.
Okay, so I guess those were the beer coolers. So I was thinking like, Gabe, can't you just shut those off? And he's like, not really. This is, they have to make money and make sure people are happy when they're
the Corona you're having right now is a pretty good one, right?
Oh, we should have had beers. We should have had beers. We should have had beers. That would have been fine. It's a podcast. You can do anything on a podcast these days. So next time we'll do the evening podcast. What's funny is it's not even noon yet, and I don't think I've ever been in a jazz club before noon. So that's kind of a new experience for me. Maybe you do this all the time because you're running the show over here. But so tell me what's been going on. So, the reason I wanted to have you on was because you basically started this jazz club back up. I mean, when you got involved, I think it was closed. But tell me how you got involved first with the Bop Stop itself, and then maybe we'll rewind a little bit and talk about how you kind of found yourself in that position. But what was happening with the club before you got here?
So the Bop Stop had 3 locations, and we're sitting in the third and current location. Right. And it was.
We should say where we are. So we're in Cleveland, and what's this location right now?
We're at 2920 Detroit Avenue.
Okay.
In Ohio City, or in the northern part of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Which is kind of rebranding itself as Hingetown.
Okay.
And the neighborhood is called Hingetown because it's between Gordon Square, downtown, and then the Market District of Ohio City. So as this specific part of the city grows, it should connect those 3 larger neighborhoods.
Gotcha.
So,
right, and those are 3 neighborhoods of Cleveland. And so if you ever come to town, it's on the west side of Cleveland. So people, listening out around the world there. But okay, go ahead.
Cool. So the Bop Stop was privately owned and operated. The current building was constructed in 2002, and it had a pretty strong run from 2003 to 2010, 2011-ish. Mm-hmm. And then the owners put it up for sale.
Okay.
And no one approached the old owners. That was Ron Bush and Anita Noneman. No one approached them with the intention of keeping the space music related. And they were very concerned that although they were giving the space a way that they wanted it to stay music oriented and keep building the music scene in Cleveland. So
right.
they ended up.
And at that time, we should mention that this location or the area, like the neighborhood, was not built up as it is now, which we should maybe talk a little bit about.
Sure.
But it was kind of like a little bit desolate, like off the beaten path at this point.
Yep,
So,
a little seedier.
a little seedier, right? Feeling?
Definitely off the beaten path a little bit. I always thought that, this building is fantastic.
Right.
But it seemed like Ron and Anita they could see what was coming, but they
Right.
were a little ahead of the curve.
A little bit ahead of the curve, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the challenge of maybe the key people that were coming in of keeping it a jazz club or a music club. They're thinking like, there's nothing else around right now. Maybe we need a bigger draw, like, some of the craft beer bars or something that, maybe was more in fashion at the moment. But
Yeah. I haven't.
Right.
I have. It would
and
actually.
it's still in fashion, really.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to talk to Ron because with the first location was on the east side, then it moved downtown, and now we're on the west side.
Right.
And I always feel like most of the jazz audience is on the east side.
Oh,
But
really? Still? Okay, that's
Still,
interesting.
yeah, we still
Okay.
get a lot of east siders. But that is kind of interesting that they kept moving farther west
Mhm.
when historically most of the culture in this city's been on the east side and University Circle.
Oh,
and
that's
stuff,
true. Okay.
Right.
Right.
So, but still, we're talking 5-minute drive.
Yeah,
from
right. It's
each
not
of
that
these.
far away,
Yeah.
right?
So, but yeah, they ended up when no one was going to buy the building and keep it music related, they were searching around for a nonprofit to donate the entire club to, and they ultimately decided on the music settlement. And the music settlement is a 105-year-old community music school that has an early childhood program, a music therapy department, and then a music kind of education. It's called the Center for Music, but that's private lessons and ensemble instruction for children to senior citizens, so all ages. And they approached the settlement. They said, hey, we have a jazz club with a parking lot and lots of gear inside of it.
Right.
Do you want it all? And the settlement, of course, was like, yes.
That's
yes, please.
That's like the most amazing day at work. If you're working at the settlement, you're like, what? Like
Totally.
huge donation. That's, to me, is like a win for the city, for the culture, for the music settlement, for Cleveland, really for, in a lot of ways. I mean, and probably even for Ron and the previous owners, where it's like, hey, this is going to remain a music place.
Yeah.
They feel good about it. And it's just, they can be proud of the legacy that they started because it's going to continue.
Exactly. And it's hard to run a jazz club as a nonprofit or a for-profit, but I think with the space becoming nonprofit, it definitely will help with the security of
Right.
just keeping this
Of the
place
legacy,
open.
right,
Yeah.
as time moves on.
Yeah. What was funny is I was working when the donation occurred. It was December 31st of 2013. I was working at Nighttown, which is a jazz club in Cleveland Heights on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
And the settlement is kind of right around the corner from Nighttown, but I never heard of it. And when I read in the Plain Dealer that
you never heard of it?
I never heard of it.
That's interesting. Okay.
And when I heard that the space was donated to the music settlement, I just went over there.
Investigated, like, hey, what's going on with this?
Asked some questions about what the music settlement's all about, but ultimately asked about the Bop Stop and what the plans were. And this would have been February of 2014, and there wasn't really a clear concept for the space yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'd caught wind that they were going to be posting a job for a management position.
Gotcha.
So when they posted that job, I did apply for it and ultimately got the job.
Awesome.
But it was I don't know. It was kind of serendipitous when we dive into the backstory of
Well,
how I really ended up in the Bop Stop.
Yeah, let's maybe we can swing back around in a second here. But so when you got involved in the Bop Stop, what did this place look like? Like,
so
did they give you the keys and it's just like, was it all dusty and dark or what? I mean, it's in really good shape actually, but what was it feel when you got on board with the music settlement?
Yeah, well, personally, I got this job when I just turned 26, and my first thought was, this is crazy that they're giving me keys to a jazz club, like probably one of the nicest rooms between New York and San Francisco, like in the middle of the country. was like, what are they doing? What are they doing?
I think it's the nicest room I've been in. Like performance space.
It's a very nice
specifically designed for performance, for jazz performance. Or chamber performance. It's the right size audience. It's the right sight lines. I mean, there's great clubs across the country, around the world that I've been to, and actually, I'll tell you a story in a second here about just some of the folks from Oberlin that I ran into when I was in LA. I was out at the Catalina Jazz Club out there. Just great places, but for some reason, I've never seen anything that really turned me on more so than this space. When the right performer's here, it's great.
It's a really beautiful room. There was a building that existed here before the Bop Stop, and Ron and Anita knocked it down and built this space from the ground up. So it has soundproof windows facing the shoreway. So it's definitely a quiet space on the interior. It's got tiered seating. The windows behind the bar, or the mirrors behind the bar, are angled so that you don't have to turn your head.
Yeah, that blew me away the first time I came here. It's like you're sitting at the bar and looking at the bar, and you can see the full stage because there's mirrors behind the bar. It's great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And it's got the race stage and carpeting throughout the entire space for acoustic purposes. And all of that was still in good shape when I got the job. The big repairs were kind of behind the scenes. We needed to clean the hood in the kitchen because it hadn't been turned on in a few years, it seemed like. We installed new air conditioning. The sad story is the donation occurred December 31st of 2013, and shortly thereafter, someone did get in here and strip some of the copper from.
Oh no!
Yeah, so
I hadn't heard that. Okay.
Yeah, so the space actually flooded right after the donation, but Anita and Ron were very generous and took care of that cleanup. And by the time the settlement moved in, the space still looked pretty new. So one of the first changes we made with the space was with the sound gear. The club's always been known for its incredible acoustics and the clarity of all the performances, but the mixing board was very dated and was dusty, and so we actually got...
But that was a cool part of the vision when they built this club originally, is they built in a recording capability.
Yeah, right. And this was in the early 2000s, so I mean, the old recording gear was hilarious. But I mean, Ron recorded a few records here. There was a band called the Jazz Unit, which had a weekly gig here at the club and featured a lot of the prominent jazzers in the Cleveland scene. And they wrote a lot of original music, and Ron recorded live at the Bop Stop Records. And with this new gear we have, courtesy of Bob Conrad, he funded a whole new sound installation for us, which includes thousands of dollars of recording microphones, new mixing console, new preamps, new software to do our recordings.
Wow!
We repatched the entire stage with new just snakes and stuff like that, and we have continued the recording legacy here at the club. January.
When was that? I was going to ask you, what was the date? Like, when did that gear get installed?
So we started having regular programming at the club as the Music Settlement in October of 2014, and the sound installation, we did it in phases, but it was completed by mid 2015.
Okay.
So it happened fairly quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We've recorded a few records with local bands here. We partnered with Blue Note and did a live recording with Terrance Blanchard that will be released April 20th of next year. There will be a live at the Bop Stop Blue Note record, which is pretty exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah, that's gonna be really cool. And now we're working with WCLV to do regular recordings here that will be aired on the radio, and that would become part of the fabric of that station. So it's looking like maybe as soon as this fall or winter, that will we'll get that started, and maybe once a month you'll be hearing live at the Bop Stop on the radio.
Oh, that's great.
Or not.
So was this kind of part of the vision when you first got involved? I mean, it sounds like what you're describing is like, oh, well, somebody donated to Jazz Club, and then all this stuff just magically happened, and me not knowing how to do any of this stuff, I just dropped myself in, and it just all went real smoothly. That's what it sounds like so far.
Yeah, no.
What I want to know is, I guess, is just kind of give people more of your background and
Sure.
think about, like, how prepared were you to kind of drop yourself into this situation, and why were you thinking that, hey, man, this is what I want to do. This
Sure.
is something for me. Because I know, like, when I first heard of you or encountered you, I remember it was like, I think it was at Brothers Lounge, which is a local blues and jazz club here. And it was a Monday night, and you were sitting in with the big band there. And I'm like, oh, yes. Who's that little guy over there? Okay. Oh, it's Gabe. Awesome. He's a trumpet player. He sounds great. He's from Oberlin. Somebody said, oh, I think he went to Oberlin. I'm like, oh, so he must be very good, because it's like Oberlin. Nobody comes out of Oberlin, being average. They're all awesome. And so I was like, cool. And then I didn't see you much after that, it seemed like, in terms of playing. And then I think you next popped up to me, like, on my radar, like, and I saw you at Nighttown, like, running sound and doing other things at Nighttown. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I know that guy. And and I was wondering, like, I wonder where else is he playing? Because that's I knew you as a trumpet player first, I guess. But maybe talk a little bit about that, because I just read this. God, there's so much to ground to cover here. One of the reasons I'm excited to talk to you is I just read, Oberlin just ran an article on you, and you can describe what Oberlin is. It's a local college or university music conservatory here. But they just ran an article on you, graduate extraordinaire, and they wanted to do a profile of you, that you're running this jazz club, but that you created this particular major and really have been successful in what you're doing. So that was a long-winded way to ask you, like, what was going on, like, when you went into college and coming out and thinking about what you wanted to do.
So I got serious about music. I tell myself I got serious about music a little bit late. I always enjoyed trumpet, but I didn't really think it would be something that I'd pursue professionally until later in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And
so where are you from originally?
I grew up in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. It's just outside.
PA.
Yeah, just outside Philly.
Oh, okay. So more East Coast. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when I was looking at schools, I was looking at schools that had a good music program, but also a nice liberal arts, or whatever you want to call it, education,
Right.
just to round out my studies. And Oberlin really stood out, but I entered just as a college student, not as a music student. And then
I see.
at
So
the
you
end
weren't
of,
accepted into the conservatory. That would be like a different audition process or something.
right.
Okay.
So
what was your major back then, or had you declared a major?
yeah, it was environmental studies.
Okay.
And I still graduated with an environmental studies degree, but
okay.
at the end,
that's interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
but at the end of my sophomore year, I auditioned for the music school, pretty much because I was inspired by the other students there, and they all sounded really good. And it was also, for me, a little difficult to take the classes I wanted to take in the conservatory without actually being accepted. So I was encouraged by the trumpet professor to audition, and was accepted and became a double degree student, which is a 5-year program that Oberlin offers, where you're jointly enrolled in the College of Arts and Sciences, but also the Music Conservatory. So for my 3rd and 4th years at Oberlin, I was in environmental studies and jazz trumpet. And then going into my 5th year, I ended up creating an individual major in the conservatory called Jazz Entrepreneurship. So I dropped the performance degree.
So, okay. Stop right
Yep.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you just all of a sudden create a new major called Jazz Entrepreneurship? I've never heard of this in my life. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we've all been doing this all along, like jazz people, trying to make our own opportunities. But where did that idea come from? And why was Oberlin open to it? Because
Sure.
Oberlin is a very unique place. It's a world-renowned place, especially if you're into the arts. People know it. And they have some Grammy winners and some Nobel Prize winners and those kind of things. So it's maybe a little bit off left of center, but it's a great institution. that gives you these opportunities.
Totally.
Which is interesting, right?
Yeah. Well, there was this big project going on at the time called the Green Arts District, and one city block of Oberlin was working towards becoming completely off the grid green energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And as someone who strongly appreciates music but was studying environmental studies, it seemed like a cool opportunity to start investigating what a sustainable jazz club would look like. And so
sustainable jazz club.
Yeah, like
really,
an eco-friendly.
I never heard this. This is great.
And so, through one of my college courses, I started doing research on like some pretty hippy dippy things, like the acoustics of green walls. Like if we are growing vegetables in a jazz club, how does that affect the acoustics of the space? And like stuff like that.
Cool.
It was
better
cool.
than a flat, like reflective wall.
Not very practical, but pretty cool. And
Right.
yeah, and that kind of grew. It started from that little idea, and then ultimately I just got really into that work and created this individual major that would allow me to really focus on running a venue through this Green Arts District project. What's funny is, as part of that project, Oberlin created a new inn, like an Oberlin, like a little hotel, and in the ground floor of that
bed and breakfast or something, or maybe a little
yeah,
bigger?
just for visiting. It's pretty big.
Families, okay.
Yeah, for families visiting the school.
Gotcha.
And in the basement of this hotel, there is a jazz venue now. And,
there is. Okay.
And it was something that I was on the fringes of working on. 10 years, whatever it was, 8 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, so jazz entrepreneurship grew out of me just getting interested in venue design and operating a venue. And Oberlin allows you to create an individual major as long as you can argue why this needs to exist outside of what they already offer. So entrepreneurship was kind of a buzzword at the time, and the school still is, yeah. And the school has at the time it's grown into something much larger than it was when I was a student, but they had a creativity and leadership department which tried to get kids to start thinking about how to practically apply their studies once they leave.
Yeah.
And so
novel idea.
Yeah. And through that program I could take classes like web design and economics and public speaking. And so I dropped.
So you did take some of those classes?
I did. So the jazz entrepreneurship major that I created, I substituted some arranging courses, some piano classes for these other courses that I thought would help me if I ever did go down the music business path.
Right.
And it's for a final project for that major. Instead of doing a senior recital or something like that, I actually wrote a business plan for a jazz club. And the Bop Stop was for sale at that time. Yeah. So when I moved to Cleveland, I actually met with Ron Bush and we talked about how the Bop Stop functioned.
Oh, really?
And at the same time, I had this business plan. And so...
were you thinking of buying the club even at this young age of like, I'm coming out of school, but this thing's available?
There was no way I'd be able to afford it, but I did talk with Ron about, maybe using the space on weekends and throwing shows and how that could work. But he was more interested in just selling it.
Just not being involved. Yeah.
And, but I was tweaking this business plan the entire time I was working at Nighttown.
Okay.
So with this business plan I created as a senior in college, I did apply for some grants to see if I could actually open my own spot. And all the feedback I got from these grant giving organizations essentially was good ideas, but you don't have any experience. So Oberlin actually...
Really? That was the reason why they kind of...
Yeah, they were like, you have to prove yourself.
To work with you.
Yeah, they're like, good ideas, you have to prove yourself. Like, why, why won't this money be wasted on you?
Right.
And Oberlin ended up giving me a $2,500 grant to fund my own internship that I created. So that's how I started at Nighttown. I approached Jim Wadsworth.
I would say anyone that creates their own jazz entrepreneurship major would get my investment money, but that's
there we
that's
go.
Just me.
Where were you? We met too late.
I don't know. Maybe we should have talked back then. But that's I could see that the drive back then just because of that. That's very interesting. Those organizations weren't quite more on board.
Yeah, well, it's tough when you're just an individual. You don't really have a team in place. Right. If let's say something horrible happened, I got sick for 3 months, then this, what would happen to this money? There were concerns like that. Mm-hmm. So, I set up this internship at Nighttown with $2,500. I moved to Cleveland. The great thing about Cleveland is that $2,500 lasted me about 4 months.
Right.
My rent was $250.
Where were you staying? Were you staying closer on the east side, or?
I was in Tremont on the west side.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
I had some college friends who were already living here, so I moved in with them. Worked for Nighttown for about 4 months for free because I had this grant money, and then when I used that all up, I told Jim I'll probably be moving back to Philly unless we can make something work here, and he ended up hiring me.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. How far, were you just really thinking that you'd have to move back, or did that really come to a close point there? Or
I just never thought I would end up in Cleveland. I think at the time I always thought I'd move back to the East Coast. I'm happy I stayed here for a lot of reasons. Yeah. But the jazz scene is still somewhat small here.
Sure.
Nighttown was kind of the only game in town, and if I wasn't going to work there, my options,
especially
for myself.
Now, since that time, things have changed dramatically. I think
totally. I agree.
At that time, I could see you're thinking there's not that much going on.
Well, there was no room for growth there. My job was what it was, and it's a small operation, and no one's going to be retiring anytime soon.
Right.
So it was kind of make something happen for myself or move back home.
Right.
So
and we should mention that Nighttown is I think one of the top 100 jazz clubs in the country. Has been voted in there many times. It's a pretty famous place. People on the scene know and have toured there and stuff.
Totally.
So it's a good place to be connected with. I think your experience with Jim was probably great in terms of just opening up your eyes to sort of the larger businesses.
Oh yeah, very grateful for that opportunity.
Right, and because he does a lot of booking, I think national booking for other artists he's done in the past.
Yeah, working with him, I was running sound at the club, but he does have a booking agency with national artists, and I was working for the agency as a booking agent during the day. So between both of those opportunities, it was, I learned a lot about producing a live concert and actually experiencing the live music, but also all of the work that goes into structuring a tour, writing a contract, advancing dates. They're all skills that I still use at this current job. I'm just now the presenter and not the agent. So, but a lot of the connections I established during my 4 years there have been pretty beneficial in this current gig.
Right. So, I wanted you to describe a little bit of that because it's I think this is where you felt a lot more comfortable than when this opportunity came up. Yeah, I think I can dive into this now because I have a little bit of this experience under my belt.
Yeah.
I've kind of, maybe not I think if I was a young person diving into this new club, just dealing with maybe these larger artists that I'd have to deal with or their management, just at a much higher, pro level, you'd be kind of intimidated maybe a little bit, but.
Yeah. No, I mean, I felt pretty well prepared. I never worked for a nonprofit. And so there was a little bit of getting used to the bureaucracy of running a spot you don't really you own, or you don't own.
Right, you don't.
But accomplishing what I want to accomplish with the space and balancing that with the parameters of this being part of a larger institution and what they want from it. But it's actually been it's been easier than I expected, and the music settlement's been really great at allowing me to at least lead, come up with a direction for the space and try to promote it that way. So while we do have settlement programming here, I'm still able to do about 220 events a year that are not affiliated with aren't directly related to the music settlement, but adding something new to the organization, which I think is how the space should be used. Incorporate the positive aspects that the settlement can offer, but bringing something new to the table as well.
Right. I think it's kind of a cool adjunct to the music settlement, and it's that they can try stuff they wouldn't normally try.
Mm-hmm.
And it's associated a little bit more with the Bop Stop than the music settlement, even though it does reflect on the music settlement.
Yeah.
It's sort of like there's still this kind of, in the marketplace, I think people still think of the Bop Stop as this jazz club or something different. And you're bringing a lot of different stuff, really vision to what you're booking here. So it's pretty fun, actually.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually turned out to be a cooler club than if I had opened my own spot because of the connections with the settlement. So just to talk just briefly about what happens here.
Right.
One day a week we have early childhood music classes in the morning. Mm-hmm. One day a week we have group music therapy sessions here at the club. And then at night, since we do have a bar and we happen to be the only community music school in Ohio with a liquor permit, all right,
right.
We just run this place like a club and open it to the general public. So the cool thing with that is the proceeds from the bar go into the operating budget of the settlement. So when our shows do make money, they're supporting our students. They just allow our students to take maybe a discount on an individual lesson, or maybe the money will just go into general operating support. But it's nice to have a space that essentially is all music related. It's not, while we do have food and the bar, all of the income that's generated here is related to recording or live performance or something like that. It's not a full-blown restaurant like a lot of the other clubs.
I gotcha.
In Cleveland during the day.
This is what I wanted to kind of, I guess, ask you about a little bit in terms of on the business side. So now, so you have this great experience that kind of sets you up to be really the right guy to take advantage of this opportunity. But when you get here, this is a facility that operates. I mean, you're selling beer, drinks. You have full liquor here as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's full liquor license, and you do sell some food or.
Yep.
I know. I think you work with maybe some of the local culinary schools, et cetera, to supply some of those things. But it's really it's an operation now. Mm-hmm. Like before, you were booking and doing sound and music stuff, but now you have to be like a general manager, right?
Totally.
So did you have those kind of skills or experience in doing any of that? And if not, how did you all of a sudden have to learn that, or who'd you learn from?
Yeah. No, bar experience and management I didn't really know much of. We didn't really have, I feel like I kind of grew into that role for a few reasons. Primarily, the donation of the Bop Stop really came out of the blue. So while the settlement accepted the donation, there wasn't really any money or money to run it. And so I remember in my initial meeting trying to figure out what my budgets would look like for the first year. The settlement was able to cover the electric bill, water bill, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, that's great, but what's my operating budget for shows?
Right.
And
and they were like,
I remember
my boss, we have to have one of those.
Well, I remember they were like, you have $2,000. And I was like, cool, for the week? And they were like, no, that's for the year. And I was like, okay, now I have to generate income with a seed money pool of $2,000.
Right.
And so I bought $800 of Bud Light and Yellowtail.
Okay.
And then the first few shows, or I should say the first month of shows, were all my friends, and they were just playing for free, helping get the space off the ground. Okay. So bartending and bar management.
So were you charging for those at this point? Charging at the door for the shows at this point?
Yeah, we were charging So
everybody knew you were trying to kind of really reinvent it, get it open again.
Yeah, just get bodies in the space. There wasn't really a marketing machine in place. There wasn't. I just had a space and $2,000.
Right.
So bartending was very easy those first few months when you only had
it was only
Bud
10
Light
people and a few beers to serve, right?
Yeah, but over time, I was able to,
because you don't have any employees at this point. I mean, it's basically just you running it, right? Or did you have other volunteers? Or?
No, the first about 4 months, I had no help at all. So I was running sound, bartending. At this point, for most of the shows, we had food trucks because our food service license hadn't been approved yet. So a food truck would be in our parking lot. I would take orders at the bar and run it through our kitchen since we didn't have our permit and straight to the food truck. The food was prepped on the food truck.
Right.
And then I'd run it back into the club. And that's how we serve our food. And then there's still people that ask, when are you getting the food trucks back? That was fun.
Right.
But yeah, over time I was able to get a little bit of part-time help, some help from volunteers. But yeah, I kind of just taught myself to bartend from Wikipedia.
Is that right? That's really what I wanted to know. I was like, how did you learn all this stuff? Because I know that the settlement is not really part of this scene. They don't operate venues like this.
They don't. It was new. Yeah, it was very new
to them. So like you can't lean on them for a lot of that type of expertise.
Not at all. But once we actually started getting people in here, I did talk to I have a few friends who manage other restaurants, and I actually, in my house, I live with Rachel, who is the manager at Nighttown.
Oh, so I didn't know that. Okay.
So when I was doing my first beer orders and stuff, I was trying to figure out, what they were selling over there, and picking her brain. And luckily, we're still mostly a whiskey and beer bar, so there's not a whole lot of specialty cocktails being made. But over time, we were able to hire some bartenders, and I do have a little bit more help now, which is nice. But that was what I needed to learn.
Right.
I felt really good.
Right.
Booking, producing concerts, easy. Bartending, not as easy for me.
Right.
And honestly, the nice thing about this job is that the space gives me a lot of confidence. Like we were talking about how nice the room.
It's beautiful.
We talk about how nice the room is, and I know that when people come in, they're going to enjoy the space. So I have that working for me. It's not someone walking into a hole in the wall bar being like, "Oh, what is this place?" As soon as you walk in here, it's something special. So, I just give my spiel at the beginning of every show saying, "Hey, we're a nonprofit, and we're going to be taking care of you as best as we can. And your money's being spent on a good cause, and thanks for being a part of helping us grow." And then people seem to get it and will bear with the little hiccups that you deal with through the growing pains of building up a venue.
Right. Well, I mean, it's every time I come back here, it feels a little bit more just, I don't know if professional is the right word, but it just feels like things are just moving more smoothly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because when I think professional, I don't mean like I like the style of the Bop Stop and the style of jazz clubs because they're a little bit looser feeling and fun. That's why you want to come here, because you want to relax and have fun, but things are just running a lot more smoothly, and it just and you guys are booking really cool shows. I mean, we should talk a little bit about because this was historically a jazz club, but you don't just book only jazz these days. It's sort of an eclectic mix and some experimental stuff that you're doing too.
Totally.
So maybe talk about the programming a little bit.
Sure. The older renditions of the Bop Stop, like you said, were pretty straight ahead jazz, and that was mostly it. Now, since we're associated with a music school, I want to present things that are a little more eclectic, because I want our students to know that if you play violin, you can go play in a professional orchestra, but you could also, hook your violin into electronic pedals and start your own metal string band.
Right.
Who knows what our students or the general public's going to click with. I kind of want to use the space as a way to get the different cliques of the music scenes in Cleveland to start interacting with each other more. So we still are primarily a jazz club, but do a little bit more classical music, avant-garde music, roots music than the other renditions of the Bop Stop. So we host a jazz jam session every month, but we also host OutLab, which is our experimental avant-garde jam.
Which I want to get to at some point.
It's super
every time
fun.
It comes up on the calendar, I'm like, oh man, I got to go out there and just bring my horn and see what's going on with it.
It's really fun, but it's been nice because with both of those jam sessions running at the same time here at the club, we are starting to get more beboppers playing with people who are, just
not traditionally jazz people.
Correct. Maybe noise makers.
Right.
But it's kind of
Right.
it's kind of cool to
Right.
see them interact with each other because it's a new experience for both of them.
Right.
And we're doing about 250 events a year, and it's a mix of local and national, international acts. So we've had about 40 Grammy winners or nominees in the space so far. We've had Joe Lovano, Fred Hirsch, Dave Lehman. We had Donnie McCaslin with his group that was on Bowie's last record,
Right.
Black Star, at the club a few months ago. So we have musicians with that sort of name recognition, as well as 3 or 4 shows a week that are just highlighting what Cleveland and Northeast Ohio has to offer in terms of the great talent that's located in this region. So, it's kind of it is an eclectic mix, and I think I like using that phrase because we just got a write-up in New York Magazine that said it was an article on Cleveland that said that the title was "Listen to Eclectic Live Music in Cleveland," and featured the Bop Stop out of all the venues that this writer could have chose.
Right.
She picked the Bop Stop, and I was like, that's awesome.
Right.
If writers are starting to pick up on what
I think that's
I'm
the
trying to offer,
right characterization.
that's great.
Yeah,
yeah.
great.
So it's also, I think people have a very specific, most people when you say jazz, they think of a very specific sound. And here, even with the shows that may not orally appear to be jazz, a lot of the performers are influenced by jazz musicians or are taking jazz in a new direction. And so I want this space to showcase that and get people thinking about what jazz is in a different way.
Right.
So that's kind of the goal of the space.
I think it kind of mirrors the sort of kind of reinvention of the city that's happening.
Yeah.
When you took this venue over, what was it, maybe when what was your year?
2014.
2014. So
Yep.
even 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
this part of like Hingetown, or what they call it, I mean, wasn't being developed as it is now. Now there's a new craft brewery place right across the street.
Yeah.
That just opened, I believe. There's
Yeah.
apartments being built. There's talk about maybe this new building that's being built. That's a new part of the music cell.
Sure.
Right.
So yeah,
What's that construction all about? So this is West 25th and
Detroit,
right?
Yep. So you're right. The Bop Stop at this location has kind of always been a destination. There hasn't been much around it, and it's actually kind of quickly becoming more of a neighborhood venue. So we have a bunch of new development. There's right across the street. There's a great coffee shop, a tea shop, a record store, a couple bars, a Thai restaurant.
Literally almost all have opened
in the last 3
years. 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah.
3.5 years. And on top of that, a lot of new apartments going up, high rises overlooking the lake. So we're starting to get regulars that live 2 blocks away, which has never happened at the Bop Stop before.
Right.
But since most of the culture in Cleveland has happened in University Circle, which is the east side, it seems like, at least with the Bop Stop, the organizations that fund the music settlement are very excited about the potential of this club and bringing culture to the west side.
Right.
So after we submitted,
when you say that, kind of the arts culture, or sort of the
yeah,
because University Circle has just got all the it's the legacy of the history of really the 20th century. It's got the Cleveland Orchestra there, the Cleveland Museum of Art. I mean, these are big
institutions,
arts institutions that are world class essentially. So they it just hadn't happened in the same way on the west side of Cleveland, I guess.
Yeah, it's just how it happened.
It's just how it happened, right?
And so after our first year at the Bop Stop, and presenting to the organizations that are funding the music settlement, saying, hey, we've only been open a year, but in that first year we had 175 concerts. We served people in multiple counties throughout Ohio. We had we were serving preschoolers through our education outreach at the club, but also had a few Grammy winners perform to the public. They like hearing that, and like knowing that that's happening in a part of the city where that hasn't happened before. So because the music settlement was excited about the Bop Stop and these funders were excited about the Bop Stop, music settlement started expanding all of its programming to the West Side, by finding a West Side home. And ultimately, they decided to move forward with that. And in fall of 2018, on the corner of 25th and Detroit, this mega complex is opening with apartments on the upper floors, and the ground floor will be all retail, and the music settlement will be a portion of that ground floor. But we'll be able to offer a full curriculum of early childhood programming, of ensemble instruction, and music lessons, music therapy. And then the Bop Stop will be just 4 blocks down, down the street. So we'll have a little bit, it's not a true campus, but we're calling it an Ohio City campus, where we will, we'll be taking over Ohio City with music, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. It's like a little explosion of the arts right here on the near West Side. And in parts of the city like that really previously were probably kind of like unactivated. There just wasn't a lot going on over here. But, in the over the last 10 years, it's just kind of been this explosion of just reinvention, culture moving back in.
Well, and I think
all these kinds of things. It's amazing.
Completely agree. And I think it's important to mention just a shout out to Cleveland, because I think Cleveland it's pretty affordable. Yeah. Which allows someone like me or a large institution like the settlement to get a job or get property at a reasonable cost. I'm able to toy around with opening jazz clubs and pay my $250 in rent, and I can afford to do that. Kudos to the music settlement for being a 105-year-old institution that's willing to hire a young person. And young people are finally starting to move back to Cleveland. So I think all of those factors kind of play a role in the story of this West Side expansion with the West Side campus and the Bop Stop. Right.
I think a lot of things are coming together, and it's just maybe just the timing of just this entrepreneurship wave, kind of just people thinking a little bit differently, especially young people thinking differently. Where I think like years ago, there were always entrepreneurs, and I've been in the tech scene for a long time, like since the early 90s. So like, but it was kind of based around like larger venture capital firms or larger corporations. There was still a lot of entrepreneurial activity, but you felt like you needed these larger groups to work with. Yeah. Now, as an individual, I think the maturation of the internet, of all these new technologies that are available to everybody, of like you said, I can go on Wikipedia and learn how to be a bartender like for tonight, because I'm opening a club for the first time tonight and I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, this is what's available now. You know what I mean? Like, you might be like, okay, I have to write a contract for this performer that, they need to have it in the next 3 hours. I really don't know how to do this, but you can reach out and find an example contract online or something. Historically this was not happening. Yeah. Where an individual could have such an impact in such this different way now. So I think that's kind of interesting. So we got a few minutes left, but along these lines, I wanted to ask you, in terms of having the sort of like leveraging the internet impact with being a club operator now. It's kind of curious to me, because all these things are changing in terms of how you kind of break out or break into kind of music and how you promote your stuff. Mm-hmm. What are the things that you like to go to now that you've had a few years experience and being this younger generation too, of leveraging social media or YouTube videos or whatever? What, like when you work with artists or people that are coming here to perform, you need to promote the show. Yeah. I mean, that's something you had to learn too, somewhat. Yeah. I guess, right.
Totally. So of course we have all our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a few paid partnerships in Cleveland. One's with C Magazine, which is the local weekly paper, and then with Cool Cleveland. And then there's a lot of free.
So when you say paid partnerships, what's that mean? You're advertising?
Just paid advertising. Okay. The rest is all free that I do. Gotcha. So I mentioned Bob Conrad before as the individual who helped us get all of our recording gear, but he happened to be the founder of WCLV,
Okay.
And so we get a lot of radio support with NPR, so that's very helpful. I do ticket giveaways on college radio stations in Cleveland, so most of our shows are promoted on college radio. We have listings in the Plain Dealer, and then I post to our neighborhood website, which is hingetown.com. I post to CuyahogaCountyEvents.com. This is Cleveland.com, which really helps me get tourists into the space. And then Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, who's one of our primary funders. I post everything to their website, but mostly so they know what's I'm doing.
On, right?
Yeah. So, in terms of getting people to the shows and just butts and seats, the best promo I have is our weekly email blast. So we've been open for, just over. Well, we've been open for 3.5 years, and we're up to about 3,800 people on our e-blast already, which I think is pretty good for the amount of time we've been open. But once I get somebody on that email list, they're cued into everything that's going on. So,
right. And so, how do you get on that email list? Like, is there a website to go to sign up, or what?
Not yet, which sucks.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
You have 3,800 people. That's how did all those people get on?
It's all people that have been to a show.
Okay.
And sign up themselves while they're at a show on a
Okay.
physical piece of paper that I then enter.
Okay.
It's a little old school at this point,
Right.
But I mean, one of the challenges in terms of marketing is that we are one branch of this larger institution. So
Right.
I think I'm in a unique position because I'm trying to differentiate the Bop Stop from the rest of the Music Settlement, even though the Music Settlement is naturally a part of our branding. But I want people to know that we have live performances here and that you're not going to take a guitar lesson here.
Right.
So I'm up against that, and I'm also up against the old Bop Stops. So the Bop Stop, I mean, between the 25 years of operations,
Right.
I'm trying to get people to think of us as a new club, even though it's the same name.
Right.
It's a little bit different music. We don't have servers here. It's still a listening room where you just kind of sit and listen. If you need anything, come see us up at the bar. So the experience is a little different. And so between battling the Music Settlement and the reputations of the old Bop Stop, I'm in a unique position where I'm trying to, I'm trying to
not lose the people that were coming.
Exactly.
And attract new people. And, Right. So, because is there so there's no direct website to go sign up for that email list. So if people are listening and want to get a hold of you or are interested in experience it, what's the best way for them to
I mean, the Facebook page is great. It's just Bop Stop at the Music Settlement. And if
Facebook.com/ say it again,
Bop Stop at the Music Settlement.
Okay.
If you just type in Bop Stop, it will pop up.
Okay.
Our Instagram and Twitter handle is Bop Stop TMS. It's Bop.
Okay.
And then the website is still themusicsettlement.org.
Okay.
And then there's a tab at the top that says Bop Stop. And if you click that, you can see everything for us. But that's ultimately what I think is we need to change immediately. It's just getting a separate Bop Stop website rather than having all of our information live within the website of the Music Settlement.
I see,
because
okay.
Most
so it's
people,
a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier doorway or gateway, and obviously once they come to the Bop Stop, they can continue going.
Totally,
to the Music Settlement.
Exactly,
it's got to be a little easier. Gateway.
Most people in Cleveland at this point know that we're owned by the Music Settlement. But if you're a New York guitar player looking for a gig and you've heard of the Bop Stop and you Google it, and the only thing that pops up is the Music Settlement, it can be a little tricky.
A little tricky to
navigate. I mean, we definitely have a little bit of work to do on getting our name a little bit more visible.
It's only been a couple of years, man, and you're running this thing by yourself, so it's been amazing so far. But thank you for just telling me what all those your Twitter handles and such are. Mm-hmm. So I'll put them in the show notes so people can find them later. So if you look on the website, you can go to Reinventionrevolution.com and look for the show notes, look for episode 8, and find all that stuff there. Anything else you want to cover before we get out of here? We got a couple minutes left. Any new shows coming up that you want to promote, like later in the fall? Because this will take me a couple weeks to
sure. We've got
to get produced out there, but
yeah, we definitely have a few really good ones coming up on. I'll do some winter shows. I know it's going to be a little bit
that's fine.
late, but on December 9th, it's a Saturday night. We have Kneebody coming, which I'm super excited about. And then the big news that no one knows about yet.
Wow, is, exclusive right here.
Yeah, on January 27th and 28th of next year, we are doing back-to-back nights with the Bad Plus.
Oh, the Bad Plus.
Which is going to be sweet. And it's the first tour with Orrin Evans on piano, which it'll be interesting to hear him fit into the group, but I'm kind of excited about it because he has Cleveland roots. His father, I believe, used to run Caribou House.
Oh wow!
So anyway, that will be fun. So
very good.
Lots of good stuff.
All right. Hey, well, it's time to get out of here, but thanks again one more time for being on the show, and can't wait to see what else is going to be happening at the Bop Stop.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, thanks. See you next time, everybody. Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of.